Welcome to REIndictor version 3.1. Hello everyone. Welcome to version 3.1 of REIndictor, a much anticipated release with a total of 6 major enhancements to the system. So this is a brief tour to get your feet wet a bit and encourage you to experiment with these new features and capabilities. So I'm going to do a quick rundown right now for you to get you prepared for what we're going to cover, and then I'll show you how to use each one of them. So here we have the first item up for our upgrade. Includes an updated micro neighborhoods data set. It's super easy to use. It simply replaces the previous data sets that you have been using for micro neighborhoods, and it reflects the latest available data. The second item is we have updated the market pop-ups with more data. Not only has the data been refreshed, but it contains more data, including a recession recovery rate, which I'll discuss when we get there, as well as a jobs trend chart. So that reflects what's going on in each metropolitan area that we're looking at. The third of the 6 items is we now have submarkets for some of the larger MSAs around the country, and I'll give you some examples of those. The fourth is we now have emerging markets history, including an animation so that you can see not just what the emerging markets are for the current year, but for previous years, going back almost 3 decades to get you a sense of the ebb and flow of the markets. Fifth on the list is the multifamily points database, which we're launching right now with the top 10 largest markets in the US and will continue to expand over time. And last on the list, but certainly not least, is the new function called emerging neighborhoods. So why don't we take a few moments to look at each of these so you can start using them right away. First on the list is the updated micro neighborhoods classifications. So when you're at the US map, when you sign in, you normally see all the little puzzle pieces that make up the micro neighborhoods around the country. These scores have been updated. So for example, if I were to type in a zip code that I happen to know off the top of my head, which is part of the DC metropolitan area, and you can see by typing the number for a zip code in the list, all 5 digits, it will show you where that might be. And I'm going to collect that first choice on the list. It's going to draw a map for us where that zip code centroid is at the center of the map, which gives us a nice starting point. If you were to have created maps in the past and put them in your archives, you would have noted that this particular top of the pyramid shape is a new shade. In fact, it went from a green or C neighborhood all the way up to an A neighborhood in this refresh. So you'll want to rerun some of your more recent maps if you're currently analyzing properties that you're actively seeking to bring into your portfolio, that you're serious about presenting to your partners and your investors and whatnot. You'll want to rerun those maps to make sure that you have the latest data available for them. The second thing we've added to this is the way that the market pop-ups have a lot more data. And if I go, for example, over to the emerging markets level of 2019, you will see, if you haven't already checked off this box, you will want to do that after you read this message, which I encourage you all to read. But we just want to remind you that the emerging markets model does need some caution, and that we are really looking at some historical data because we are not yet fully recovered from the recession 2020 that began in February. When I zoom back out away from the downtown view, I can now see there's a lot of gray. That's because in this particular part of the country, most of these markets are not emerging and were not emerging last year because they had already had a peak in the marketplace. They had already emerged and many of them had cooled off. We're ready for sort of a reset at the market level. If you click on any of these individual markets, for example, when I click up here, you can see a pop-up appears. And if I scroll my screen a little bit, we can see the name of the market at the top. This happens to be the Springfield, Frederick, Rockville market in the DC metropolitan area. We show you the population and the population rank for the current year that we have the most recent data. We show you the growth of the population so that you can get a sense of the previous year over the current year available, whether it's growing or declining, and we can even see how its growth ranks nationwide. We give you a market size category. So for example, the suburbs north of Washington, D.C. would be considered probably a secondary market by most people. And then there is a categorization of whether it's emerging or continuing emerging or new emerging. So you'll be able to catch each market's categorization in there. But what's new at the bottom of this list that can be very interesting for a lot of people is the recession recovery. And we are going to update this as quickly as we can. We're getting data on a monthly basis for this for most of the US. What this means is that we are trying to kind of figure out where the baseline was before the recession began. And we know that every market, all 429 of them that are now in the system, a huge expansion from the previous system of 380 something markets, that the markets all had a downward trend in March, and particularly every single one of them in April. So the question is, what percentage of that loss have they recovered? How far or close are they to getting back to even to where they started the recession at in the February timeframe of 2020? This particular market is 65.5% recovered, and that's sort of middling. 50 to 70% is pretty normal for most markets around the country. It's ranking 130 out of the 429 markets. So it's in the upper tier, but not the most aggressively reinvigorating, which is to be expected of that particular market because of the dynamics and the fundamentals that are in that market. At the bottom of this pop-up, you now have, for every one of the metropolitan areas, a bar chart that includes the recessions, which are the gray areas, overlaid with line charts, which show you the job growth, comparing each of the individual markets, which are drawn as the black lines, to the U.S. metropolitan areas as a whole, which are drawn as the purple lines. And what that will show you is that some markets might have less of a recessionary behavior, or a stronger or a delay to arrive in recession, a delay to recover from recession, and it helps you get a much better sense of how the market generally tends to behave in recessionary times and in growth times. As an example, we can see in the most recent long-term recession, which was back in 2008, thereabouts, that the market itself did not go quite as deep as the nation of all the other metropolitan areas around the nation. And you can see that it was able to climb out at roughly the same rate as the US overall. So it didn't lead, it didn't jump out quickly, but it also didn't fall quite as far. And the idea would be you would check back and see how it behaved in previous recessions as well. It did do a little better in the 2000 recession. It didn't fall nearly as far, and it recovered even before the country had finished bottoming out. So this can be helpful information for you to better understand each of the markets that you are exploring and explain the markets and their behaviors to your partners. So that's the second item in our list. The third is the submarkets for the large areas. And in fact, we're looking at a version of that right now. What we have done in the major metros, for example, Washington, D.C. being one of them, is we've split them into smaller pieces so that they're more easily digested, and we're comparing apples more to other varieties of apples, as opposed to, as you get further and further away from the core of the large metropolitan areas, you get a different behavior, or they're different characterizations. So here we have Washington, D.C. as one market, and then there is a Northern Virginia A, Northern Virginia B, Northern Virginia C, and Northern Virginia D as you get further and further out from the center of metropolitan area. It's the only market, by the way, in the whole country that has the A, B, C, D in them right now. But it also has that northern suburbs up towards Frederick. There's also the Prince George's County along with Charles County added in together as a collective. So we've taken many of the very big metropolitan areas and we've tried to bring them down to a more manageable scale. We've done this, for example, with Chicago, with Detroit, with San Francisco, with Los Angeles, with Dallas, with Miami, with Seattle, and with Boston. Those are the ones that are coming off the top of my head that I know for sure. And then also, because of the way the data is available to us and could be useful, we've done a very similar thing with Baltimore and Kansas City. Kansas City has essentially now been split into two, reflecting the two different parts of the metropolitan area, one in one state and one in the other. One's in Kansas to the west and in Missouri to the east. So that will be helpful to you to really get a much clearer sense where the trends are developing, where the data doesn't get washed out with averages quite as much as it could have in the past. So really excited to bring that capability to you, and it underpins some capabilities that we're looking to bring to you in a future version. So we're looking forward to that as well. Number 4 on this list is that we now have an emerging markets history with animation. If I were to click in the upper left corner of the screen right below the zoom plus and minus, I can click on the American flag icon outlining of the US, and it just kind of resizes the map so I can start over again at the national view. In the lower left corner of the screen, I can turn on the market animation module. You can see now that it is checked off, it's activated, and then what I can do is let it play a movie where it's going to go back to the oldest data that we have available for all the markets that we're working with to show you the cycle of behavior and which markets are emerging and which are not. So when I press the play button, we're going all the way back. As you can see in the legend, it will update us. We're at 1994, we're at 1995, we're at 1996. It's going to cycle through, and you'll actually see the heating up of the economy with lots more light green than dark green markets, because markets are emerging, and then the cooling off as we get into the recessionary times, as things start to slow down. Like 2000, 2001, we had a slowdown. You can see nationwide we had pretty much a cooling off for most of the markets for several years. And then we moved along until we got to the point where we had another boom in the economy. And so you are able to play that at your leisure and enjoy what you see there. By the way, if you do see a few markets that have no data in them, it's because the data at the granular level we need to construct it may not be available as far back in history. So we've done as much as we possibly can for you. Now, what that does for you as well is if there's a particular moment in time that you wanted to look up. So for example, if you wanted to see where things were in 2001 and just get a grasp of that and not have the evolution of those maps continue to challenge you and distract you, and you could just sort of freeze time in, you can do a drop down in the markets menu at the top left of your screen there, and you will be able to choose any particular year as your viewpoint. The 5th item on the list, I'm going to go back to our micro neighborhoods map so that we can look at this more clearly, is a really wonderful addition to the top 10 markets population-wise in the US. I'm going to go back to my 2010 zip code here, and I'm going to press enter on that to see if it can pop up for me fairly quickly. 10, and there it is. And I'm back in on that map at that more local level. When I am inside my locations panel module, I will be able to click on the MFP, multifamily points, multifamily properties directory as a option. It's an on-off toggle. It's all or nothing. And what we're doing here is putting little dots on the map that'll help you with your comping capabilities, both for sales comps and rental comps. So as an example, if you had a broker who you were working with and they were looking at giving you a property to analyze, let's say it was this particular purple one here that I'm circling in the center of the screen, and the comps they gave you for this property, just for a case study on this, maybe they gave you these 3 properties to the north and east. And you'll notice those are all in B neighborhoods. And what you're looking at is a property that's in a C neighborhood, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's close to an area that may be a little more iffy. It's a D neighborhood. So you may not want to let the comps for the upside for rental prices or the dollar per door or anything like that you're analyzing to be only the 3 properties that the broker gave you, or the 5 properties, if they're not comparable neighborhood qualities as well. So what this would allow you to do is then say, oh, you know what, I really want to also add to my comping mix for my own analysis purposes. What's going on with this property here? Well, now you know the name of it and you have the address of it, which means you can then go do that little extra research that will help you to better understand how the market is behaving. And you'll probably want to add at least as many comps as the broker's already given you to your mix. And you may even want to group them and say, well, here's the comps that the broker gave me, and here's the comps that I think are better fit to the neighborhood classification and the property class, so that you can get a better sense of really what's your upside, how much can you push those rents, and really what should you be paying fairly per dollar per door. So we're pleased to give you the multifamily points directory. It is thousands of points in the top major metros. So they're there for Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, Phoenix, Miami. And I know some of you are going, but wait a minute, what about my market? We're already working on releasing for as soon as possible, everyone's use, the next 20 markets. So bring us all the way to the top 30, and then hopefully the top 50, and then all the way to top 75. We're going to go as far as we can that's reasonable and give you that extra resource. The last thing that we've added to this mix, I'm going to turn off the multifamily points here, and I'm going to say that the location that the dot is at right now is a property we may be considering, the blue dot in the center of the screen. Let's say we're considering that property. Wouldn't it be nice to know whether or not any of the neighborhoods surrounding it, or the neighborhood that it's in itself, has been in a part of the metropolitan area that is accelerated past the market's trend line of opportunity and growth. And we've factored that in with what we're calling emerging neighborhoods. So when I click on the EN button here in the My Save Locations panel, I don't have to have a particular site located. I don't have to have a particular property actually active. I can simply turn that as an on and off. And what it's going to do is put a plus sign, a purple plus sign, at the center point of the neighborhoods that are classified by our model as being emerging neighborhoods. Again, these are the neighborhoods that are doing better than the average trend in the marketplace. So it's not necessarily bad if an area isn't emerging, but it certainly can tell you a lot if an area happens to be emerging or adjacent to emerging areas. So if you've got two B neighborhoods that are emerging, you might even suspect that they were C neighborhoods not long ago, and that maybe the C neighborhood to the south would be in the path of favorable pressure to allow it to be an emerging neighborhood sometime soon as well. Now, again, this is our emphasis that you don't use one piece of data to make a decision. It doesn't say, oh my gosh, we've got it. It's an emerging neighborhood, so it has to be a good deal. It's more information to help you and help your investing partners feel more connected and informed about what's going on in the neighborhood that you're looking at and immediately around it. You also do not want to use this as a backwards way to try to find a property. Let your brokers send you listings. Filter them through REIndictor by putting them on the map and finding out if they're in the right part of the market that you're looking at. You don't want to tell a broker, oh, I want to look for property over here because I'm told it's emerging neighborhood. It's not going to get you anywhere. Just let them keep bringing you good opportunities, and you get to decide whether or not it's going to fit what you're looking to accomplish. And this is an additional tool to help you with that. What you're going to find is you're going to have emerging neighborhoods in virtually every class of neighborhood. So you can have an emerging A. It may have just gone through some dramatic growth and it was previously a B or a C. You could even have an emerging neighborhood in a D that's designated now. So for example, this neighborhood that's a triangle right here, I actually really anticipated that this triangle would have been already kicked up to at least a C, because I know there's a whole lot of A in the west side of this, but apparently it's not enough. So my guesses, my suppositions are not enough. I use real data and I let the data tell me what's going on. And I actually know this particular neighborhood would be good because I'm a local. I know they're doing lots of redevelopment on the eastern portion of this. I would still be careful because it's not an area that has solidly recovered from some difficult circumstances. But I would be more interested now knowing that the neighborhood to the south, the neighborhood to the northwest, a lot of neighborhoods to the northwest, and even neighborhoods to the north and northeast have already shown the transition to C or B or A, and that they have recently had these favorable characteristics. So I'd be far more interested in working in a neighborhood that was a D with a plus in it if it's a neighborhood that's surrounding with these more favorable circumstances. So you can see another one down here, by the way, where you've got all this A to the sides of this D neighborhood. And as you get to study that particular neighborhood, you would find out there's quite a bit going on inside that neighborhood. So the data really does capture a very nice pulse of what's going on. There you have it. That's version 3.1. There's a long list of capabilities. And hopefully this discussion will help you start using these things right away. We'd love to hear from you. What are you doing with this? How is it helping you? And perhaps you'd even be willing to let us know how the system has helped your business. We'd love to be able to capture a couple of testimonials so that we can share your story of how REIndictor has improved your business with others who are considering joining the REIndictor family. With that, I will wish you a happy holiday season. We are delighted to be delivering this to you in the holiday times. Maybe while it's a little bit quieter in your office, you'll be able to take a little bit of a tour here and analyze some deals with these new features in play. And we're looking forward to bringing you lots more capabilities that aren't just on the drawing board. They're actually in production right now for the next version. We're looking forward to putting 3.2 out there in your hands as quickly as we can. Always looking forward to hear from you, hear your comments, hear your suggestions. So keep in touch and email us at support@REindictor.com and let us know how things are going for you. Thank you and happy holidays.